We've covered a lot of classic Universal rides on this channel, and now we've gotten to the point where I have to have a good, long, and hard think every time I'm coming up with a topic for a video. So now we have to dig a little bit deeper and start covering rides that are a little bit less popular. Gone are the days of me rambling about Jaws or Jurassic Park, and in are the days of me covering things like A Day in the Park with Barney. That day isn't today, obviously, by the title of this video. Today we're going to be talking about Backdraft, the scorchingly hot special effects show that brought the experience of being surrounded by fire to the people of Southern California. The eyebrow singeing 8-minute long show lasted at the park for 18 years and featured roughly 40 overlapping special effects and took over 1,000 cubic feet of natural gas per show, which is roughly the same amount that a normal American household uses in a year. For as much well-deserved criticism it got, the show is a fairly impressive look into special effects pyrotechnics and delivers on that classic Universal goal of educating as well as exciting guests with the many processes of filmmaking. So without further ramble, let's discuss the history of Backdraft at Universal Studios Hollywood. In order for us to properly talk about Backdraft, we have to go back to the year 1991. The Super Nintendo just hit the shelves, and Nirvana's Nevermind would change the world of rock music forever. Also at the same time, Ron Howard would release his 8th studio film, Backdraft, a film about two estranged firefighter siblings coming together to solve a series of arson attacks on the city of Chicago. The film really does a great job of making a fire seem like a scary monster, and the effects are a masterclass in pyrotechnics in film. The only reason I even saw this movie was because of this attraction, but at the time it was fairly successful, making over $100 million in the box office on a budget of just 40. But it wasn't like some of the other attractions we've covered where turning this into a theme park attraction was almost a shoo-in. Film wasn't this large franchise. People weren't going out and purchasing Kurt Russell action figures, which isn't a bad thing. This just wasn't that type of film. It's mostly a crime thriller slash family drama, and for sure isn't something that would appeal to the whole family. At the time, Universal Studios Hollywood was undergoing a huge transformation with the opening of the Studio Center / lower lot, which would introduce us to such things as the ET Adventure, which would shift their image from being an enhanced studio tour experience into becoming a full-blown theme park. And of course, my least favorite ride at the park, the Starway, the series of long escalators that connects the upper and lower lot. Quick sidebar here, Universal missed out so hard on making Fast and the Furious Hollywood Drift take you down to the lower lot. I have this weird vertigo feeling every time I go back up. Like I could just fall backwards at any time, causing a large domino of people as I tumble. But maybe that could just be me. Let me know. Does the Starway freak you out at all? It freaks me out a little bit. Let me know in the comments. The studio tour entrance would be down here, as well as several shows and experiences like the World of Cine Magic, a show that would allow guests to, quote, find out how electrifying movies can be, atop Hill Valley's clock tower, and our Back to the Future special effects show, which would be a showcase version of the effects from the film, and it would allow one lucky audience member to recreate the famous Doc Brown clock tower scene. Dangle from the Statue of Liberty in The Magic of Alfred Hitchcock, which was another separate portion of the show, similar to the other special effects demonstrations Universal has done before. This would showcase how various effects were pulled off and allow a lucky audience member to be a part of some kind of showcase, this one being a recreation of how they used matte paintings for various backgrounds in classic films. This would give the illusion that the audience member is hanging off the torch of the Statue of Liberty. And finally, create sound effects for a hit television series in our Harry and the Hendersons sound effects show, which is the first time I've ever heard of there being a Harry and the Hendersons TV show, but it exists. Look it up. This would be a showcase on Foley art, the art of creating and manipulating sounds out of everyday objects to fit specific scenes in shows and movies. After a quick demonstration, audience members were invited to try to sync their own sounds to clips from the show. All of this may seem trivial nowadays in the era of CapCut and ease of accessibility to editing software. You could pretty much do everything that any of these shows does on your home computer at this point. This was an entertaining and educational way, though, to inform guests on the process behind filmmaking, something that wasn't so easily available as it is today. Again, remember, we have like behind the scenes footage, we watch VFX breakdowns. None of this was really easily accessible information, so I can imagine this being really, really cool. In the location of where the Studio Cafe is now today was the Lucy, a tribute, which was a small museum-like experience that would take guests through the history and career of Lucille Ball, featuring outfits used in I Love Lucy and various other items. In the location of where Starbucks is today was AT&T at the Movies, which was a preview center of up-and-coming films. There was of course various food and snack options on the lower lot, but what stood out to me was that there was a margarita bar. I just like the fact that even before the Jurassic World ride brought us the Isla New bar, there was a history of fun tropical drinks in the lower lot. Soundstage 30, before it housed Backdraft, had the TV taping stage, basically a soundstage that allowed various real-world television studios to shoot in front of a theme park audience. A lesson that both Disney and Universal both learned is that productions don't really want to shoot in the middle of a theme park. After the initial hype of E.T. died down, Universal was looking for something to fix the declining attendance numbers of the park, and they were also looking for something that could tide guests over before the opening of Back to the Future the ride. And by some executive decision, Universal decided to get rid of the TV taping stage and transform Soundstage 30 into a special effects demonstration themed around, you guessed it, Backdraft. Universal in the 90s was obsessed with fire. Most of their attractions at their parks, especially Universal Orlando, had some sort of element of fire. People always joke that Universal Orlando pretty much just smelled like gas in the early 90s. So this was an effect that the team at Universal Creative had down to a science at this point, which is saying something considering how many issues they had with rides back then. So it makes sense to me that a natural and cost-effective idea would be to build a show that just features one large fire. And at the time, Backdraft was an easy layup. It's a movie with firefighters that used pyrotechnic technology and could be kind of easily fit into this educational format. The main show sequence, or pretty much whole attraction, would be based around the large warehouse fire set piece at the end of the film, and like I said earlier, featured 40 special effects techniques to make this warehouse fire truly feel chaotic. The whole point of the show was to showcase how pyro experts have full control of fire used on set. Fire explodes out of doors, trickles and follows laid out paths, sparks and sputters out of control. There are lots and lots of fiery explosions in this show. The fire even survives an onslaught of water coming from a sprinkler system, and the fire just keeps burning. For what it is, they really put a lot of effort into making this fire far from boring. The show required so much natural gas upkeep that the Southern California Gas Company had to install a direct line into the soundstage. Everything, including the set, had to be intensely fireproofed in order to handle the intense heat 200 times a day, not to mention how the fluctuating change in temperature could really damage the set if not properly built to handle it. The walls of the soundstage are coated in a material used by industrial refineries to help prevent heat damage, and the ventilation system was seriously industrial grade, which allowed all the air in the building to be recycled on a minute-by-minute basis. On paper, this show sounds pretty dangerous. It sounds like if one thing went wrong, everyone in the audience would be toast, but in reality, Universal really went above and beyond with making sure that this would be an intense experience, but most importantly, a safe one. And after what was probably one shooting day with Ron Howard, Scott Glenn, and Kurt Russell, Universal opened Backdraft on July 1st, 1992, because nothing says beating the summer heat like sitting in the middle of a warehouse fire. But let's discuss what guests would experience in Backdraft. After walking through an unthemed archway, guests approach the mostly unchanged soundstage, and once inside, walk through a film set themed room that has a large projection screen in the middle. Here you'd be greeted by a team member who gives a fairly quick introduction to the show, and soon the lights dim and we watch a video featuring various action-packed scenes from the Oscar-nominated film. This is where we see Ron Howard chilling in an editing room. He explains to the audience what a real-world backdraft is and the efforts the cast and crew went through making a film that was realistic and paid respects to the real-world heroes that are firefighters. He also talks about how they wanted to give the fire in the film this beastly quality, like it had its own evil mind of its own. The pre-show has a very similar vibe to the Twister pre-show, and if you think about it, they're very similar concepts. Next, we cut to Kurt Russell and Scott Glenn as they discuss how difficult executing some of the fire scenes were to shoot. Both of them really got face-to-face with fire pretty much every day on that project. Kurt Russell comes in to bring it back to the point of paying tribute to firefighters and how what they did doesn't even compare to the real-world hardships and feats that they go through. To close, he explains that because of how scary real-world fires are, that's why they wanted to give the fire in the film a mind of its own. This is when a controlled fireball bursts in front of us. Kurt, in a similar serious tone to Bill Paxton and Twister, said,
"It seemed to have a mind of its own. It could even be considered beautiful. But though it may seem harmless, don't let it seduce you. For without warning, it might suddenly..."
This is when the fireball explodes and disappears, and a buzzer light ushers us into the soundstage. Guests line up and stand on a platform overlooking a large warehouse filled with barrels and various warehouse objects. We hear over the sound system the director call action, and a small fire breaks out in the warehouse office. This fire grows and causes a large fiery explosion that destroys the office completely, which ruptures fuel lines, causing a chain reaction of small explosions out of barrels and various parts of the warehouse. Fire starts to spread throughout the warehouse, melting various supports, causing platforms to crash all around us. It's pure chaos. In order to get guests to feel like they're really close to falling right into the flames, the platform drops a couple of inches, which is even more terrifying. I haven't really talked about this yet, but Backdraft was so scary to me as a child. I didn't really know what was going on when we walked in, and all I can remember was fearing for my life and hating the fact that this attraction felt so hot. In reality, most of the heat you felt was from a fan blowing warm air on you to simulate the flames being closer than they actually were, which is evil. I wasn't tall enough to really see what was happening, so my only memories are being scared, confused, and uncomfortably warm. But back to the ride. After the platform drops, the show resets, and that's pretty much it. The show, a few months after it opened, had a real-life fire break out on September 24th, 1992. The cause of the fire was very similar to the 2008 backlot fire, with both of them being started after a routine soldering thing gone wrong. The air conditioner unit on top of the soundstage caught fire, causing smoke to fill the soundstage, and according to the studiotour.com, the audience thought the smoke was a part of the show, so nobody was alarmed. The guests of course had to be evacuated from the building, and luckily nobody was hurt, but the fire was quickly put out in 15 minutes, and it cost Universal $150,000 in damages. The show was totally fine and continued on to live a long life. They really didn't do much to change the show over the 18-year long run it had, other than really just changing the facade and marquees around the attraction to better fit the times and better convey that this just isn't a giant empty warehouse. There's an actual attraction in there. Universal would give Backdraft the old fire axe on April 11, 2010 to make way for Transformers The Ride, which at the time was a huge upgrade for the park. As much as I like Backdraft, Universal Studios Hollywood doesn't have a ton of space, and Backdraft was massive, and the movie was something that was long past its peak in popularity. So I'm totally for Universal replacing it with an actual ride. I wish Transformers was a better ride, but in the early 2010s, Universal needed something new at the park, so everyone was pretty hyped about it. Again, I really like Backdraft. If it was built in a smaller footprint, it probably would still be around today. Looking back on it as an adult, I can see that this was a really well-made attraction that was entirely of its time. I don't think Universal will ever do something like this again. I'm still hoping that maybe with the success of Twisters, we could get some kind of modernized remake of Ride It Out in Orlando, but experiences like these are so classic to Universal and were something that you couldn't get at any other theme park. These were some of the last Universal attractions that were made with that edutainment aspect in mind. Now Universal is a theme park giant, so I understand why they're more focused on delivering big e-ticket attractions to Hollywood, but I would love to see them make a new version of a special effects show of some kind and add some time wasters into the park. With the Animal Actors show and special effects show being closed, there's a real deficit, and there's something so unique and fun about experiences like Backdraft that I would love for them to do something like this. For Universal standards, it had a super long life at the park, so it was probably about time for it to change, but I'm sure we can all remember when Universal had a pretty remarkable heat stroke simulator. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I'm going to be back to making hopefully weekly uploads. I've been very busy with life and everything. But let me know what you guys experienced when you went on Backdraft. Were you also scared of the Starway like I was? Just comment below, let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll check you guys out in the next one. Peace. Bye-bye.